All right, so we're diving deep into the way of the Bodhisattva, which is pretty exciting stuff. We've got this awesome blend of ancient wisdom with, advice that's still relevant today, thanks to the Dalai Lama himself. Oh, and we even get a little sneak peek behind the scenes with the revised edition's preface.
It's really remarkable, isn't it? I mean, the way of the Bodhisattva at its core is all about this idea of cultivating bodhicitta.
Bodhicitta. Okay, now, for those of us who might not be familiar, what exactly are we talking about here?
Essentially, bodhicitta is about developing this awakened mind, one that's striving towards enlightenment. But, and this is the key, it's not just about your own enlightenment, it's about reaching that state for the benefit of all beings.
All beings. Whoa, that's a pretty tall order. I mean, sometimes struggle to share my snacks, let alone enlightenment.
And that's what's so fascinating about this book. It's not about dropping everything and becoming a monk meditating in a cave all day. It's about finding a way to have peace, to be effective right here, right now, even with all the chaos of everyday life.
Yeah, and speaking of relatable wisdom, the Dalai Lama's foreword really resonated with me. He talks about how qualities like love, compassion, generosity, even patience aren't just these outdated virtues. They're tools, tools that we can use to build a more harmonious life.
Absolutely. He's really emphasizing how developing these qualities within ourselves has this ripple effect, a positive impact on everyone around us.
Right? Like this ripple of good vibes. I was really struck by this idea of bodhicitta actually arising in a mind that's so used to, well, putting itself first. It's like Shantideva is saying that we can actually transform that deep-seated self-centeredness into something so much bigger, so much more beneficial.
It's a profound concept. He describes it as this noble, jewel-like state of mind, something truly wondrous to behold.
He actually says, this noble, jewel-like state of mind arises truly wondrous, never seen before. Talk about a transformation. But how do we actually begin cultivating something that feels so out of reach?
That's where the brilliance of the book's structure comes in. Shantideva starts by really showcasing the incredible benefits of bodhicitta. It's like he's saying, hey, this path has some serious perks, trust me on this.
Like he's giving us this compelling sales pitch for inner peace.
Exactly. And just when he's got you hooked, he pulls back the curtain and reveals the real work involved. He acknowledges that backsliding. Yeah, it's going to happen, especially at the beginning. Because cultivating bodhicitta, it's not a finish line you cross. It's an ongoing journey.
It's like those New Year's resolutions we make, right?
Yeah.
Full of good intentions, and then a few weeks later, we're back to our old habits.
Exactly. But here's what makes the way of the Bodhisattva so valuable. It provides these practical techniques, these insights that help your inner growth actually last, to maintain momentum even when that ego starts putting up a fight.
And you just know it will. So it's about more than those fleeting moments of inspiration. It's about building the foundation for lasting change, right?
Right. And that leads us to the heart of it all, understanding the very nature of our own minds.
So we're moving from the what of bodhicitta to the how.
Yes, and that's where we really start unpacking the practical wisdom of Shantideva's teachings. But we'll dive into that in the next part of our deep dive.
So understanding our own minds. Easier said than done, I'm guessing.
You got that right. This is where things get really interesting. Shantideva, he doesn't sugarcoat the tough stuff. In chapter 4, he gets really real about what happens if we backslide.
There's that line that really stuck with me. If now, while having such discernment, I am once again consigned to hell, oh, what is it that has me in its grip? That's a pretty intense wake-up call.
Totally. But what I find fascinating is how he approaches this fear of backsliding. It's not from a place of judgment. He's tapping into something we all experience. We're striving for something, making progress. And then the thought of losing all that ground, it's scary.
It's like, I've come so far, I don't want to screw it up.
Exactly. And then, almost like he's answering his own question, he identifies what's holding us back, our own minds.
He specifically calls out our kleshas. Remind me again, what are those exactly?
Right, so kleshas. These are like mental states, afflictive emotions that cloud our judgment and lead us astray. Think. Anger, jealousy, pride, attachment. They're like weeds in the garden of our minds.
Choking out all the good stuff we're trying to grow.
Precisely. And Shantideva doesn't just hit us with a simple anger is bad message. He goes deeper, showing how these emotions work, how they can be hidden under the surface, and then sabotage all our effort to be more peaceful, more clear-minded.
It's like that saying, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. We're the ones who end up suffering.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But recognizing these kleshas, that's just the first step. Shantideva offers this powerful antidote: vigilant introspection.
Okay, now we're talking. But what does that actually look like in
Okay,
practice?
picture this.
Okay.
You've injured your arm, right? And you're trying to make your way through a crowded room. You're hyper aware of that injury, protecting it from getting bumped or hurt even more. Vigilant introspection is kind of like that, but for your mind.
So being constantly aware of our thoughts and emotions as they pop up.
Exactly. Noticing those kleshas, those negative patterns, without judging them, and then making a conscious choice about how you respond.
Makes sense. But I gotta admit, that chapter on patience really threw me off. I always saw patience as this passive thing. You just endure. But Shantideva, he presents it totally differently.
He flips the script on patience, that's for sure. He presents it as this radical act of inner strength, meeting challenges with wisdom and compassion, not just reacting out of anger or frustration.
He even says our enemies are our greatest teachers. That's a tough one to wrap your head around.
It is a radical idea. But think about it. Who really knows how to push our buttons like our enemies, right? They trigger our kleshas, those ingrained patterns of reactivity, and that gives us a chance to see them clearly and choose a different way to respond.
It's like they're holding up a mirror to our flaws, even if we don't always like what we see.
Precisely. They become catalysts for growth, even if they're not trying to be helpful. Like Shantideva says, therefore I am their tormentor. Therefore it is they who bring me benefit.
Wow. Talk about a change in perspective, turning a negative into a chance to grow,
Yeah.
which is way harder than it sounds, by the way.
You're telling me it takes practice, a lot of it.
Mhm.
And that brings us to another key part of what Shantideva lays out: cultivating inner peace.
Okay, so how do we get that inner peace we need to actually put these challenging ideas into practice? Well, Shantideva offers an interesting answer in his chapter on meditation. Meditation. I have to admit, when I got to this part of the book, I thought, okay, Shantideva, that's easy for you to say. You're not the one juggling work deadlines and trying to remember to buy groceries. But the more I read, the more I realized it's not about running off to some Himalayan cave.
Right. It's about cultivating a certain quality of mind, a sense of spaciousness, clarity, something we can tap into no matter where we are or what we're doing.
And he actually talks about this, doesn't he? Finding those moments of retreat, of quiet, even when life's super busy, made me think about those times I sneak in a walk in nature, or even just a few minutes of peace with a cup of tea.
Those little escapes, they can really recharge you, can't they? It's like hitting the reset button on your mind. And what Shantideva is saying is that we can learn to have that same peace, that same presence, even in the middle of all the chaos.
So it's about finding that stillness within, that inner sanctuary, not waiting for the perfect conditions to just magically appear outside.
Exactly. And that inner sanctuary, it becomes even more crucial when we get to the later chapters, where Shantideva really digs into the nature of reality itself.
Which brings us to emptiness. Now, there's a concept that sounds simple on the surface, but wow, can it be a real head scratcher?
It definitely challenges our usual ways of thinking. And it's important to remember that when Shantideva talks about emptiness, he's not saying that nothing matters or that life has no meaning.
Right, it's not nihilism. So how do we even begin to grasp what he's getting at?
Think of it this way. We often go through life thinking that things have this solid, independent existence, that our worries are permanent, our identities are set in stone. But what if? What if none of that's actually true?
Okay, I'm following you.
What if our experiences, our thoughts, even our sense of self, they're all interconnected, always changing, like waves on the ocean? What if true freedom comes from recognizing that impermanence, from letting go of our rigid ideas about how things should be?
So like realizing that the worries that feel so huge today, they might not even matter tomorrow. That our happiness doesn't have to depend on clinging to fleeting things or avoiding all the unpleasant stuff.
Exactly. And this understanding, this direct experience of emptiness, that's the core of Shantideva's teachings. He's not just giving us a list of rules or meditation exercises. He's inviting us to see the world, to see ourselves in a completely different way.
It gets really meta, doesn't it? It's like the whole book has been leading up to this point.
It's the culmination, the importance of cultivating compassion, the power of patience, really understanding our own minds. It all comes together in this profound realization of emptiness.
Even the different translations highlight that, don't they? I mean, the preface even talked about how scholars have been wrestling with the nuances of translating this concept of emptiness for centuries.
It shows just how deep and complex this idea is. People are still debating it, exploring it, even today. And what's remarkable is that Shantideva doesn't shy away from this challenging concept. In fact, he ends the book with this powerful call to action.
You mean that part where he talks about how much he wants to help others understand emptiness? Not for his own benefit, but to free them from suffering.
Exactly. It's like he's saying, look, this isn't just some intellectual game. This is about waking up to the true nature of reality and then helping others do the same.
So it's not just about personal enlightenment, it's about recognizing that we're all connected and extending that understanding to everyone.
Yes. And that's the beauty of the way of the Bodhisattva. It's a path of personal transformation and compassionate action, a journey of waking up to our own potential and then using that awakening to make a difference in the world.
Wow, what a journey it's been. We talked about the power of bodhicitta, unpacked some of those tricky aspects of our own minds, even dipped our toes into the vastness of emptiness.
Yes, I've only scratched the surface.
Ah,
But hopefully this deep dive has given you a taste of the wisdom and compassion that Shantideva offers in the way of the Bodhisattva.
it's a book that invites us to keep exploring, to keep asking questions, and to stay open to the possibility of a more awakened, more compassionate way of living. And as you continue your own journey with this book, remember, what if true happiness, lasting peace, what if it comes not from getting what we want, but from understanding that who we truly are is already whole and complete?
That's a powerful thought to carry with you. And until next time, may your journey be filled with wisdom, compassion, and the courage to embrace the transformative power of bodhicitta.